What's up and welcome back to Paul Monner. In today's video, we're going to go over one of the most insane and sophisticated Ponzi schemes the world has ever seen, which is still operating today. There have been many multi-billion-dollar Ponzi schemes that have run for decades without being exposed, but eventually they all crumble under their own weight and get shut down. The Ponzi scheme we're covering today is different. It's been operating for 30 years and has been exposed as a fraud many times. Every time it gets shut down, it reappears in a slightly different form. We're talking about the MMM Ponzi scheme. Let's start from the beginning. In the 1990s, the Soviet Union had just collapsed, and Russia was transitioning from communism to capitalism. A young man named Sergei Mavrodi wanted to take advantage of the opportunities in the new economy. With the help of two friends, he established a computer importing business called the MMM Corporation. After a few years, this business failed, and Sergei had to think of a new direction for MMM. He decided to enter the investment services industry. At the time, Russia was privatizing its state-owned enterprises and sold privatization vouchers to the public at cheap prices. MMM created companies to aggregate money from investors and buy these privatization vouchers for huge profits. Sergei sold shares in this new company to investors, initially promising a 3,000% annual return. They spent aggressively on advertising, running TV commercials showing how a MMM investor made enough money to buy his wife new boots, a fur coat, and a new car in just a few months. As the scheme gained momentum, Mavrodi increased the promised returns to a staggering 30,000% per year. While 30,000% returns might sound absurd to you or me, Russia had only recently transitioned to a capitalist country. People didn't know much about stocks or investing, and there was no benchmark to judge what returns should be reasonable. By 1994, the scheme was a massive success. Sergei was raking in millions of dollars per day from millions of individual investors. However, as the operation grew, so did the challenges of managing such an influx of cash. According to some sources, there were moments when the money began to spiral out of control, leading to instances where Mavrodi was reportedly trying to move or hide large amounts of cash to evade authorities as the scheme's unsustainability became evident. The extent of this scam had gotten so bad that Russian President Boris Yeltsin took notice and ordered the Ministry of Finance to crack down on unregistered securities offerings and false advertising. They launched an investigation into MMM and quickly found out it was a Ponzi scheme. They weren't making any of the investments they claimed. They were simply using money from later investors to pay previous investors. When they shut the operation down, massive crowds gathered outside MMM's headquarters, trying to get their money back. But there was no money to give back, and the vast majority of investors lost everything. Despite overwhelming evidence against him, Sergei maintained that MMM was a legitimate company and claimed the government was cracking down on him out of jealousy. To avoid prosecution, he ran for a seat in the Russian parliament. Surprisingly, victims of his Ponzi scheme believed in him enough to elect him in 1994. As a member of parliament, Sergei had immunity from criminal charges. However, this only lasted briefly, as the parliament soon voted to strip him of his immunity. Sergei then gathered enough signatures to run for president, which would have also given him immunity, but this failed when election authorities discovered most of the signatures were forged. In 1998, he was officially charged with fraud, but managed to evade authorities by hiding in Moscow for 5 years. Eventually, in 2003, he was captured and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. This is an incredibly light sentence for a man who scammed millions of people out of hundreds of millions of dollars. After his release, he quickly started another Ponzi scheme called MMM Global. This new version was even more blatant than the original. They promised 100% returns per month, but didn't claim to have any real business operations or investments. They simply stated that your money would grow and you could withdraw it when more people joined the scheme. They used a virtual currency called Mavro on their platform. Your Mavro would grow every week at a promised rate of 30% to 100%. When you wanted to withdraw withdraw your Mavro, the funds would come from people who entered the scheme after you. This type of operation is known as a transparent Ponzi scheme. They don't even pretend to have legitimate operations. People who enter it are either incredibly naive or believe they can get in on the ground floor and cash out before it collapses. Sergey knew that poorer countries would make the easiest targets for scams, as people often lacked financial education and distrusted the government and law enforcement. With this in mind, he expanded to Africa, setting up MMM branches in South Africa, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Ghana. They also expanded into Southeast Asia, including the Philippines, and into South America, including Brazil. MMM attracted victims with a supposed ideology of financially empowering people. They promoted a Marxist ideology, claiming that the current banking system and financial overlords enjoy incredible wealth while workers live in poverty. They claimed MMM was a non-profit charity breaking down the old financial system and replacing it with a fair system for peer-to-peer financial help. Aggressive advertising promised that a $200 investment could grow to $4,000 in a year with a 30% monthly growth rate. When Bitcoin gained popularity, MMM linked their scheme to cryptocurrencies to capitalize on the hype, offering 50% monthly returns for investments in Bitcoin. They even created their own cryptocurrency, Mavro Coin, to facilitate transactions in the scheme. In addition to being a Ponzi scheme, MMM Global was also a pyramid scheme. Members earned more Mavros if they recruited new participants, leading to numerous testimonials from members boasting of their returns and promoting the scheme. The largest single victim of MMM Global was Nigeria. MMM entered Nigeria in 2015, promising their usual 30% monthly returns. Given the country's government corruption and lack of trust in authorities, Nigerians became easy targets. MMM targeted the most vulnerable, including the unemployed and elderly. They even involved church leaders, persuading them to promote the scheme to their congregations. Within the first year, they raised tens of millions of dollars from 2.4 million victims. The problem with Ponzi schemes is that they rely on new participants to pay returns to older investors. Because MMM offered 30% monthly returns, their liabilities grew exponentially, quickly exhausting the supply of new recruits. After a year, MMM Nigeria froze all accounts, preventing withdrawals. They refused to admit it was a scam and blamed the freeze on negative government and media attention. Millions lost everything, and the government set up a special hotline to prevent suicide. Despite this failure, MMM reopened in 2017, asking for new investments with the promise that old victims would get their money back if they invested again. The scheme quickly collapsed, and investors lost another $60 million, financially ruining many. Over the years, MMM opened subsidiaries in over 100 countries, mainly in financially vulnerable regions like Brazil, the Philippines, Indonesia, and many African nations. In 2018, the mastermind behind MMM, Sergey Mavrodi, died of heart problems at age 62 in a Moscow hospital. Although he spent 4 years in prison for the original Russian scheme, he was never charged for the global scams he ran afterward. It's unclear how much Sergey personally made, but investors worldwide lost hundreds of millions, enriching the scheme's international affiliates and promoters. Today, MMM is still active in many countries. With Sergey dead, local branches operate independently, and they claim to have 138 million members. Though this number is impossible to verify, the decentralized nature of the scheme makes it nearly impossible to shut down completely. The success of MMM may stem from its blatant disregard for legality. They don't claim to have real investments and rely entirely on attracting new members to pay out old ones. Most people know it's a scam, but many think they can profit by cashing out before it collapses. Unfortunately, this almost never happens, with most profits going to the promoters running the scam. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.